We're here with Greg and Donnie at the Bureau of General Services Queer Division, which is inside the LGBT Center in New York. Thanks for being with us. Take a moment to introduce yourselves.
Sure. Well, I'm Donnie Jochum, and I am originally from New Orleans, and I moved to New York in 2000, and we actually met about 5 years ago. So the project started fairly early in our relationship, so we'll get to how that all sort of came to the table.
We like to joke that we got pregnant quickly.
And gave birth to a bureau.
Yes, and a bureau was born. My name's Greg Newton. I grew up in Connecticut, in Coscob, so about an hour north of the city, and I've been here since '91. And what else? I guess we'll just hop into
let's move
center
on.
The bureau.
How did you give birth to the bureau?
Yeah.
What the bureau is, what's its origin, and what is it?
Yeah.
Well,
So we were walking around where a different light used to be, and that was in September of 2011. And we just asked ourselves, when did that close? I can't even remember. And then we said, wait, when did Oscar Wilde close? Which led to, wait a minute, is there no gay bookstore in New York City anymore? That's embarrassing. We should do it with a bar. And so the pipe dream began, and we started, like, hey, we've got this great idea. We'd love to do this. How do we make it work? We know bookstores are closing and everything, but it's got to be more than that. We want some kind of community space.
Yeah, I think for me it stemmed the same conversation. It also stemmed from frustration of having to go to some place like Barnes & Noble in New York, which is pathetically stocked with LGBT titles. It's an embarrassment to be in a city of 9 million people and go in and have one Oscar Wilde book, one James Baldwin book. You're lucky if you get a Dale Peck or Scott Heim book, and maybe an Edmund White, right? And so frustration from that experience of having to go to them, and then not wanting to shop online and pay through channels, because I felt like my background was in music retail, and I know what that means for copywriting and for artist royalties. And when you go through a third channel like that, chances are diminished that an artist is going to get their due. So it came from some of that frustration, that business frustration, but also as a literature major, not having the experience of going into a gay bookstore to discover things, connect randomly with books, with titles, and meet people. So there was some of that for us as well,
Yeah.
And then the fantasy from, oh, let's do this, let's just do this, and well, if we're gonna do this, what are we gonna do? And if we had an ideal situation, well, let's have books, and let's have zines, and let's have a cafe, and let's have a bar, and we'll have events, and we can have performances, and musicians play, and so
Art on the walls.
Right, it all came down from a okay, what's the core to get this accomplished? And then we just started brainstorming with all of our friends in our network.
And researching. It's funny looking back how much energy we spent on thinking about the cafe, considering that never materialized.
What kind of sandwiches are we going to have?
Exactly.
Get little,
are we going to allow Wi-Fi in the cafe? Because I'm really annoyed with people.
Yeah, because, in New York you can't go to a coffee shop because everyone has moved in. For the day, so you can never find a table, and that was one of the big discussions: was Wi-Fi or no Wi-Fi. So that conversation whittled down to some reality, and we got connected in the book industry, and the ABA we reached out to. We went to some meetings, conventions, and then initially in the beginning, which then led to volunteering at Blue Stockings for Greg the summer before we actually kicked off, and it was a lot of
early in 2012. We incorporated, and just kept talking to people and reaching out a lot to, the CUNY Lesbian and Gay Studies Center, Feminist Press, which is also at CUNY, and I was a grad student at CUNY too, so I had a little familiarity with that. And then we met Kimmy David through at one of these booksellers meetings. Kimmy's was from Blue Stockings, and she was super excited that what, someone's opening a queer bookstore in New York. Great. So that did lead to me volunteering at Blue Stockings in the summer. I don't know if you guys are familiar or anyone watching. Blue Stockings is on Allen Street in Lower East Side. And it's a radical bookstore is how they build themselves. Originally it was focused on women and feminism, and then they, I think, changed ownership, and it expanded its mission to be a politically radical bookstore and center, and they do have a cafe.
and they've been there for a while, and they have a very strong community and a great presence. And when we were down there, it was a good connection for us to have while we were down there. So it's nice to have someone else akin to what we're doing and have a relationship in that way. So the other thing is, early on, we just networking with our friends, and our good friend Brian Clamp, who has an art gallery in Chelsea, was a consultant for us. Our good friend David Christie introduced us to A.A. Bronson, who gave us some great advice on what to do and what not to do when it came to zines or in the New York market, how to connect better with the community. So a lot of support. And then our friend Mark Owen introduced us to Claire Fleury and Alicia Exum, who had Strange Loop Gallery on Orchard Street. And through that introduction, they hosted us first. And we were there and had an amazing time. And
we had originally, they had agreed, we had all agreed that we would be there for 2.5 months. This is going to be a pop-up shop, and then
we didn't know what was going to be next.
We had no idea. We'll fundraise. And
we financially planned for, let's try this out and see, because New York is famous for pop-ups, so let's just do it, right? And then that transformed into a longer relationship that was 9 months?
9.5, yeah.
Yeah, 9.5.
We did a little fundraiser. It wasn't one of those all or nothing kind of fundraisers. We got the nothing. I mean, we launched it like a couple of weeks after we opened, so people didn't know who we were. It was a real tough sell.
What was the timeline? What year are we talking about for this first location? When was this?
2012.
Yeah, 2012. November 15th, 2012 is when we opened.
All right. And I think the pop-up idea is interesting. Was that basically just to kind of get the feeling of the vibe of what it would actually be?
That, and we didn't have money for a 5-year lease.
We did our business plan, and like most new LLCs, we didn't finish the business plan, but we had consultants, and most businesses don't finish the business plan and use it as a guide. So that's kind of where we were, and the intent of the pop-up was exactly that. And me, Greg has some retail background, but he comes from academia, and I've been in retail since I was 18. And so understanding the retail dynamics or the business dynamics of that, it was, okay, let's feel this out and let's see what's going on in New York, because we know independent bookstores are around, but they're scarcer and scarcer. What's possible? And what they did for us, what Strange Loop did for us, was allow us to root down and get connected to the kind of community and crowd that we wanted to really deeply, the art crowd, fashion crowd, music, indie, like urban, New York folks that are to this day our friends still. And
we had envisioned this being on Lower East Side or East Village. I was always drawn to that neighborhood. It was the first neighborhood I moved into and lived in for a few years before moving to Brooklyn. And just loved the legacy. I mean, Allen Ginsberg and the Beats had been there. Wigstock started there. So there's
the punk legacy.
It was
queer,
all of the
but
art. The queer was all part of that art and poetry scene, and we loved that.
David Wojnarowicz. I mean, all of that.
It had a different feel than the West Village. Oh, that's gay men. Which is what people think, and we like that. Okay, we're two men. We don't want everyone to think this is just a boy. We
already battled that. We already knew that was going to be, okay, these are two white guys, and they're also gay, and so everything's going to be male centric. So we but that's not who we are. We're all over the map in terms of our taste and interest and connection. So we wanted to make part of our mission be exclusive of all voices and participate and contribute. This isn't our space. This is everyone, which is kind of fundamentally where we went with events. We opened it, and the advice that A.A. Bronson said to us was say yes more than you say no. And we went in totally saying yes to almost everything. And that has, really has been the thread from then to now, is that now we have so many people, wonderful people coming and offering and saying, hey, I'd love to do an event with you, that it's kind of building itself on its own at this stage. Greg does a ton of work, don't get me wrong, but it's less of us reaching out the way we did initially. Now folks are coming to us and it's like, okay, yes, oh no, that's not really our audience, we won't do that,
And just to quickly say who A.A. Bronson is, we mentioned him twice. He's a Canadian artist. He was originally part of an artist group that was, they were also lovers, 3 guys in Toronto called General Idea. 2 of them died. A.A. Bronson is the one who survived. But most people know them. They were the ones who did, they took Robert Indiana's LOVE, from the 60s, that famous art form. I mean, it's taken form in sculpture, painting, signs. And they did AIDS, AIDS. So most people have seen that. That's one of their works. But AA has been in New York for a long time. He's been on the board of Printed Matter, which is in Chelsea, which is an important, it's not really a bookstore, it's like anything printed that artists do, anything that's printed on something, and it's an amazing place. And he started the New York Art Book Fair a few years ago, which has blown up into this huge thing. And that was actually our first, the first time we had stuff to sell.
That was our first
We had a
retail.
table at the New York Art Book Fair in the tent where all the zines were. So it takes place at PS1, which is owned by MoMA, and that's in Long Island City, and it's this huge, huge fair. And most of it takes place in the building, but there's also a tent outside where it's mostly zine makers or, low-cost items. It also happens to be feels like 70% queer. So we felt right at home. It was really nice. We got to meet a lot of great people. We had already met some of them and had been working with some of them through the outreach we had done. But that's kind of where we officially went public and launched the Bureau on Pride 2012. Where we went with about 16 volunteers. We had our T-shirts printed up, Bureau of General Services Queer Division.
And the back had coming soon to New York, a bookstore and cafe.
Queer bookstore and cafe coming soon.
Yeah.
We still have those T-shirts.
They're definitely collector's items.
So we went out with the volunteers, collected email addresses. We launched our website that day, so people could go to the website and fill out a little survey, so we could get some feeling of
if you gave us your email address, you got a free tote bag. So 17 of our friends who offered up for their day, we had a great day. It was pretty incredible to just walk around and talk to people. Yeah. And almost everyone was like, oh my God, it's so important. Oh my God, this is great. Oh, I can't wait. So that was our first pulse check of, you know what, there's a thirst for it. It's what's the right dynamic and how can we make this successful? Knowing that New York kills business because of real estate. Because of real estate.
Yeah.
Cost.
How did the name come about?
That's a great
story. What do you mean?
Yeah. It's complicated name.
There are many sources to this.
Many sources.
I mean, we don't even have a good origin story of how we got there because we were tossing around so many names. But I do remember at one point saying okay, whatever we call this, I want the word queer in there. I want that to be clear, that this is a queer thing that's
we
going
envisioned
on.
the sign on the outside so that it wouldn't be misleading to anyone. We don't want anyone walking in here by accident and going, right? Okay, there it is.
And we wanted to signal to other queers, this is for you.
Right.
So even if we were playing around with these playful names that might be a little like, what is that?
What?
We did want that to be in there.
Yeah. The other piece is not to have the word book in there,
bookstore,
bookstore, because of the death knell that was tolling and has been ongoing, and that people just have this overweight idea of books,
or they'd say, the gay bookstore, that's over. So we wanted it to signal like that. No, this is something different.
And we can do anything we want with that name. We can we can do anything we want with that name. It could we could just take all the books out of here tomorrow and turn it into a clothing store, right? So, and I mean that's an extreme, of course, but that's just an example of what the name allows. And the origin of the name is we're kids of the '80s, and the bands that we grew up with and the music that influenced us are very fake organizational sounding, very institutionalized. So Joy Division, Kraftwerk, Human League, the Style Council, Culture Club, we could go on, right? New Order,
Public Image Limited.
So it was a play on, we wanted it to be a name that kind of stood out. Yes, it confuses some people. Yes, it's a mouthful, but that's not on us. So we followed our feelings, and our friends actually helped us pick out the name. We had 4 or 5 names, which I don't even remember what they are now. But I sent out emails and said, which one of these do you think is best? And this was the one. And
people do you remember the it was like a queer punk band, Pansy Division? In the 90s. So we liked that.
Yeah, we liked that.
Taking Joy Division.
And Pansy Division.
But I was also doing a PhD in art history. And I was what ended up fascinating me about art history, I had also done, as an undergrad, studied religion, were these ideas of what is legitimate, what is authentic, because the art market depends on, it has to be a legitimate work by this artist, it has to be an authentic thing to sell.
It's been authorized.
And I was fascinated by the artists who played with that, like Dadaists who played with who legitimizes it. And we liked how that connected to where we are in LGBT politics. Like, okay, the fight recently has been so focused on marriage and on overturning Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And it seemed like, okay, so the focus is really on getting these larger institutions to legitimize us, which we kind of bristled at, like, no, we don't get our legitimacy from you, we get it from ourselves. Like, we don't need someone else to legitimize us. I mean, I realize it's complicated and there's some good things about getting that legitimacy. You get some goodies with it, like not losing your job or
taxes.
There's a lot of good things with getting that legitimacy. But the question of legitimacy is something that I've always found really, really interesting. And the fact, and I like coming back to no, you get it from yourself. Mm-hmm. And if you don't get it from yourself, no authority is really going to give it to you if you don't feel legitimate as a human being in and of yourself. So we like the idea of we make our own bureaus, we make our own institutions.
And when we filed our name, we actually tried to file as Bureau of General Services in the state of New York, and they said no because it sounded too much like a governmental agency. So we had to file as BGSQD. So we can operate under that name on our own, but for tax filing purposes and institutionalization, it's BGSQD.
Yeah. What was I going to say? I lost it. Anyway.
Well, I'm interested to know, starting from the pop-up store in 2012 to now, how do you think that many years in business, what has changed and evolved? I mean, you've been through several different locations, but how has the idea of the store and what you carry changed over the years?
Well, our second location we moved to was right around the corner. It was on Hester Street. So we were on Orchard between Canal and Hester. We moved around the corner. We moved while we were doing this 5-week fundraiser, which was crazy. It was not, all of this has been by the seat of our pants, so it was like we launched this fundraiser in July. How ideal, going through early September.
When everybody's gone.
Exactly. We hoped that the tail end of it, ending I guess a couple weeks into September, that would help it. But anyway, it was great. We ended up doing this Pyramid Club party. Justin Sayre, I don't know if you know him. He's a great comedian, writer, thinker. He's actually doing quite well for himself now, doing shows at La Mama and Joe's Pub. But we had approached him because he had been doing this thing called the International Order of Sodomites. So naturally we loved that. And they were he did them at the Duplex at the time, and they were just funny. And it was about kind of holding on to gay culture, and he would talk as the chairman of the board of the International Order of Sodomites, and he had like a little cloth that folded out the initials, and the chairman decrees, and it was all about often wagging his finger at queers of today and saying don't forget where you came from, and don't forget your heritage, and in a playful way. And he would feature. It would focus on different queer icons. So of course there was a Liza one, and there was a Cher one, and so Justin ended up being the MC for this fundraising party we did at the Pyramid Club. And the Pyramid Club itself is such a legend East Village performance, and so much of it queer. And it was really exciting. And Justin Vivian Bond performed, a lot of, so many people, Dane Terry, Penny Arcade. So it was really exciting for us. We felt like connecting to those roots that we valued in the city, that were queer, and queer in a broad sense, which is one of the things we love about that word, is that it is okay, it's not necessarily about your sexuality alone or your gender identity alone. I guess you could say it's about not fitting in with the dominant culture, and that was something we valued. So
what has changed?
Oh yeah, sorry, I went off on a total tangent.
What has changed from then to now is where we had a very clear idea of what we wanted to stock. As time went on, we just became more aggressive in terms of opening up to people as they came in, saying, what are we not carrying? What should we have? What do you think is part of this mission that we're on? And making a cultural space that is not all inclusive, all exhaustive when it comes to being a library, because that is not the method. And then making sure that we curate it. So along the way, we kept to that. And then I would say midpoint through, we kind of got a little heavy. So we got too much in, and then some of it wasn't moving, and some of the stock wasn't moving. So then we had to rethink about a year ago when we moved in here. After we moved in here, okay, we have a lot of stuff on the shelves. What is not resonating, what is resonating, and get back to a curatorial mentality, and just say, okay, if there's something we don't have, we can order it for you. So we went on, it was sort of like a up and down, and then back to original. So that has been a change for us. I think financially, when we first opened up, we just wanted it to be a space for people to come and talk, and we didn't want to charge for anything. We didn't want to ask for money. We were just like, this should just exist. And along the way, we've realized and had a lot of people mentoring us and saying, your events are free. You're not asking for a donation. You're not doing a door charge, or you're just having beer and wine for free. And, you could ask for a little donation for these kinds of things. And so because of our innocence and naivete, right? And we just wanted to have a space.
The beer and wine was not free for long.
we opened up to the ideas and the possibilities of how can, aside from a massive fundraising campaign or a Kickstarter, et cetera, Indiegogo, what can we do along the way to generate interest and support from the community, firsthand, and that was, okay, we can offer suggested donation, no one's turned away. We can now, what about if we ask at the door suggested donation, no one turned away. We ask artists because it is the space and they're using the space, and Greg is labor intensive with doing the Facebook posting and the emailing and all that great stuff that goes into a business. What about asking artists to contribute up front when they book an event with us versus us just saying, yes, come on, do it, and not asking for anything? And at first it was like, oh, that's kind of strange, but then we realized artists are willing to help and they understand and they totally get, and we don't really get any kind of
we
can't
explain it we don't sell enough books to support this. We're all volunteer. We're not making any money. We have a lot of volunteer help, but we need you to chip in too. So if you want to do an event with us, we ask you to chip in as well. And after we felt confident enough doing it because, okay, we've been doing this for a while. We've shown you that we are committed to this. Now we need you to chip in too.
Right. And knowing that from the business, and when we have book events, books still didn't sell, even at the events.
Yeah.
So what is the public doing? If this is a participatory relationship, this is an exchange, and if we're no income for 4 years, right? And I do this outside of my day job, which supports us. No income for this. So passion project, but it is a community passion project. So what could we do that would be acceptable for the community, the artists would buy into and support us in ways? And we are sponsored by Fractured Atlas. So if you want to donate to us and write it off on your taxes, you can go through Fractured Atlas. So we have an umbrella
organization.
Okay.
Yeah, we have umbrella nonprofit status, even though we're an LLC.
And we really got tired of talking till we were blue in the face about buy books.
Yeah, don't buy on Amazon. Don't buy on, we know.
I'm tired of talking about it. I'm tired of making that pitch.
Yeah.
So if you value this, then support us whatever way you want.
Right.
If you're not buying books, then make a donation or volunteer here or
drop $1 in the box.
Yeah, something. It's helped tremendously. I mean, we've gotten more aggressive about it.
And our featured artists who come in, like Raymond, the Lutzak, who's here today, they more are saying to their audiences, hey, support, donate, give them some change, buy a book.
Yeah.
Right? You're in the space. So it's become less of us having, that's been a big change from then to now, is that we don't have to say that message the way we used to. Now the artists are coming in and they totally get it and say.
We now have a history that we can
we
point to, we've done this, we've done that, and
right.
We've had this many exhibitions, we've had this many artists and writers and activists perform here, and an estimated crowd size and all that stuff you can point to and say, and the people we've worked with, which is very valuable to us, we can say, we've done a variety of things, it's all different kinds of people, and people see that and they're like, oh, okay, we'd like to work with you. And that's been nice, to hear, the bi community, they're like, wow, we're not used to other queers taking us seriously or even noticing us, and you guys have been super nice. Or the trans community and trans poetry readings are packed.
They're packed.
And it shows that people are really into this.
We can sit 45 with chairs. It gets a little tight, but then some of the chairs can be up on high.
We say 40 to 50.
Yeah, 40 to 50. And if it's a standing room event, because sometimes we do have standing room events, performers don't want chairs, they just want to have the space to move around in. We can fit, I don't know, the room capacity is no more, I don't even know what's on the door, 150. I don't see 150 in here.
Oh no, I don't want to be in here with 150.
Yeah.
Unless some are hanging from the ceiling.
Well, and I think it's because our fixtures are in here. So if it was a vacant room with just chairs, I could see that. So I would say, no, I would push standing room 75 would be push, for us.
The
pushing
most
our
full
comfort
it's
level
ever been was
and I wasn't here for it.
Jiraiya is this Japanese manga artist, gay manga artist, and Ann Ishii and Graham Colbines, who do Massive. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah.
They brought him over, and it was his first time in New York, and he doesn't speak any English, and he has such a cult following, and it was packed. It was so crazy. I was really worried. I'm like, oh, the art on the wall, don't knock the collages off, they're fragile. But it was amazing. I mean, it was great that the center actually had to ask people to leave because they were blocking the halls.
Yeah.
So you mentioned a little bit about you're back to being more of a curated store now. What do you look to stock in general for your books and your zines?
Or what have you learned that people are most interested in?
That's a better way to put it.
Yeah.
Somewhere between curation and what people want.
It's also it's a combination of what we've put out there and what the response has been. Because we definitely, that link to the East Village and Lower East Side, radical politics, experimental art, all of that was important to us. And so we gotten that back, and certainly when we were in that gallery, that Claire Fleury and Alicia Exum's Strange Loop gallery, that made such a perfect fit in that way. And so, I would say things that are off the beaten track. From the beginning, we had a kind of oppositional stance to the kind of human rights campaign mode of thinking, like, we're just like you. And, our thing has been like, no, we're not. And we really don't want to be. You're not a model for, for us to follow. I think we can teach you a lot more about how not to, how to have a just society and how to be loving to people and compassionate of people towards people who are different and who don't fit in with your expectations. So that's been key to it, definitely.
And I would say what the community has registered is they love the exposure to authors or artists who do their own work that is on the edge, that is very indie and handmade, homemade. So that's why the zines are so powerful. The other piece is we do really well with academic titles of a certain genre, so gender studies. Even we've had more recently requests around LGBT history, and we also have we got a selection of books on HIV history, AIDS activism, because we started to get more of an ask since we've been here for books like that. And then the other piece, I would say, the regular sellers, we do well with the classics. So the books that, like I said earlier, James Baldwin, Ed White, David Leavitt, etc., John Reschi, but also, Kathy Acker and some of our in the community, indie community, well known, but the general community coming and asking for people that maybe they wouldn't find at a Barnes and Noble.
Dennis Cooper,
Right. So that definitely has registered. The one thing we actively though face is we get a lot of male artists. So how we actively pursue including art exhibitions or content that isn't male driven.
Which obviously is not reflected right now.
It's work. A challenge. It's work.
Yeah, because it's constant. I can't tell you how many gay male artists have come to us, and it's like, this is great. I like this. We've featured a lot of dick, and it's a back and forth. Like, okay, obviously people respond to this, and a lot of people like it, but we have to come back and remember. So
is it a matter of not being able to find those artists, or that when those artists are in the space they're not trafficked as much? Or
I would lean more towards finding them and getting connected to them. So there are so many people out there doing so much, which is where the New York Art Book Fair was a great launch for us, because we connected with countless people from that first initial event in 2012 that helped to feed what we carried in the beginning. And I think it is a matter of getting out there and exposure to who's doing what. We have our own events, so we do not go out. Our social life are
This is
the events
it.
we have. Yeah. So we can't get out to go to a Brooklyn anything
Yeah.
or a Harlem anything or a Bronx anything, because when we're done with this, we just go home. And
So it's been important to
reaching out.
Like our next exhibition is going to be a group show, and it's being it's artists who work with visual aids. I don't know if you know visual aids. They were founded in the 90s, maybe even 80s, to support people with HIV/AIDS through the arts, and to support artists who are
with,
HIV positive.
Yep.
And they're a great organization. We love the work they do. And so they asked, we reached out to them. So that's going to be a group show. It's being curated by Sam Gordon. So it's good for us to do that. And then our show in the fall is being curated by John Chaich, who is someone we were introduced to pretty early on in the game. So it's good to do that, to have like, okay, you're out there, you're doing this already. Because what's coming to us is primarily male artists that are focused on the male body. And it's great, we love it, it's a big part of what we do, but we don't want to only be doing that.
Yeah,
and
it's
the
a one-sided dialogue.
You know, in November, our show November, December, January was an activist show that I was really proud of. I worked with Charlie Welch to pull that together, and Elsa Waith. I mean, this wall was amazing. It was like a Black Lives Matter wall. It was all these signs, portraits of people who were victims of police violence, queer and not queer. And it was just a wall of faces and the dates of their birth and death, and that was really powerful. And then the rest of the room had like dyke activism, queer activism, ACT UP, AIDS activism,
Occupy.
So yeah, it was nice. So
Outside of the events, how would you describe your customers? Because your events obviously draw.
different customers depending on the event. Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah.
But who's your general, during your open hours between 1 and
7.
Seven?
Yeah.
Who's coming in the door?
Well, being at
Yeah.
the center has changed things dramatically. So it's there are people who are here all the time, who use the center a lot in their services. And then there are, I would say, a lot of tourists, a lot of people who are visiting New York, and they do a little search and they're like, oh, I found you.
Right. They
Thanks
search.
to Google.
They search us, or because they're visiting and maybe not see us, but they see the center. And so they
Right.
come to the center as a hub, which is incredible. And then in the course of coming into the center, they get you see them walking around with the programs in the directory of the space, and then they come in and they poke in, and we still
and we often get the what is this?
What is this? Which is great because the library used to be in this
Right.
room. So,
So
we
that
do
confuses
also
people.
get, hey, is this the library? What is this? And then we educate. And so we get that consumer, we get the international consumer or the out-of-town consumer who knows who we are or sees us online, and then they come directly to see us. So
People who've met us through the events.
Yeah,
I
come
mean, the
back.
events are just so important.
Yeah.
It's when we do the bulk of our business. It's when we get
Right.
most people in here, and it just keeps expanding the project. Because with each one, like, oh, my friend read here,
or
and I'm so sorry I missed that event.
Or I know my friend said you had their book, and
Yeah.
I wanted to come in. I heard so much about you, or my friends have come to events, and I've heard so much about this place, but I never got a chance to come. So
And this is where social media is important, because you put a photograph up and people are like, oh, I wish I had gone to that. And it's so important to like, there's stuff going on here all the time. It's
I
active.
subscribe to the newsletter, even though we're obviously not just showing up at your doorstep.
Yeah.
But you've got stuff going on 2, 3, 4 nights a week.
Yeah.
I would say if you looked at a demographic of our consumer, just at the age group, we get a younger, exploratory, curious customer coming in, and then we get the other end of the community that remembers the gay bookstores and has heard about us or has come to an event, and then they have continued to follow us. And we also have customers still following us from when we were downtown at Strange Loop. And so remembering that, oh, that space was so amazing, but it's so nice to see where you've come. And everyone has been really supportive about the evolution, and excited that we're here in the center, and has kept in touch. And we do what we can do to keep those relationships going and reaching out to the art community or the fashion community that was first there with us, to just say, hey, come on, and then picking events that might attract them to come out because they might be all in Brooklyn. Right. So what could we do to, include them still, now that we're not in the Lower East Side?
Yeah.
So.
But so much of the programming is just people coming to us. It's a lot. Sometimes I feel like, oh, did I respond to that email? I feel bad. I don't. It's hard to keep up with. It's
For you,
so
is this your
much.
full-time job?
It's my full-time job. Yeah, non-paying,
Sure.
but full-time nonetheless. Which I've gotten better at reminding people, like. Not because, I'm choosing to do it.
Sure.
It's no one's holding
Sure,
a gun to my
sure.
head. But I do want people to know, like,
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
is, I'm doing this not because of a paycheck, although someday that would be real nice, but because I really believe in this, and it's valuable to us.
I know we should wrap up because
Yeah.
you guys need to actually
Yeah.
open the door.
and on that thread, though, I want to acknowledge the volunteers that help us, the ones that actually show up, and the handful that actually shift the full day, like Lewis is about to come in, and they take care of it so that
he's been with
he
us for years.
can work at home and do things at home without the concern of being focused on too many things at one time, and just build the newsletter on Monday and send it out, and book events on Wednesday, because we have Bill who's here on Wednesday, and then Dan who's here on Thursdays, and then Abed who's here on Saturday, which allowed us to be at the Rainbow Book Fair yesterday. So to pull us
the
back
volunteers are
around,
really-
right? We want to acknowledge the volunteers who are here during the day and allow the work that he has to do to happen. The behind the scenes stuff that a lot of people don't see. And for me, it's the accounting. It's following up on the inventory. It's the it's the tax stuff. It's the So, and that's my nighttime weekend if I'm not here helping with events with him at night after I spend my day doing my day job, right? So we just want to acknowledge the volunteers.
Absolutely. Last question. Do you see a point where this does start to turn a profit? Maybe you draw a paycheck.
Yeah. We pretty much have reached the conclusion that we have to become a nonprofit. And to get funds from, grants, because what we're doing is community work, and there's money out there for that. It's just we're under an umbrella organization.
Right.
We're not a nonprofit ourselves. So we want to figure out how to get there and the best way to get there so that we can get funding, and that I can actually get paid for my labor. But
funding also to evolve the space. So a projector screen potentially that drops out of the ceiling, a projector that is in the ceiling embedded so we can have more seats when we have projection, a better amp sound system with multi mics.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
all that money that's
we've
available and accessible to a nonprofit, but his labor hours and pay for that in some way is critical.
And it would be great to have funds. We have so many great connections with so many kinds of artists and activists and authors. It would be great to do like a biannual publication or annual publication, whatever.
Yeah.
We have so many people who are like, I'd love to support you or work with you.
Yep.
And we did one for the fundraiser we did back in 2013.
I'm glad you mentioned that.
The poet Andrew Durbin.
Yep.
We asked him to pull together a collection of people, some of whom had been with us from the beginning, others who we didn't know that he knew, and we did a book with Publication Studio, an independent press that we really like. So that was like, if you donated $50 or more, you got a copy of the book, which was called Future Perfect.
Yeah. So we got a taste of the publishing piece of it, and I think that's something that was part of our original business plan. Is that the 10-year plan was, I would love to have a publishing press, a indie house, right? No, whether it's one title a year or it's two or whatever the ambition is, I would love to have a bureau imprint. And Andrew Durbin allowed us to taste that, and him curating it and pulling it together was just amazing. And the format that it's in and the size that it is and who is represented is incredible. So I think we got a good taste of that, and it's still part of the plan somewhere along the way. And we've had people who've approached us as well saying, hey, I want to start a press. Would you guys be interested in talking? And so we've been approached to potentially do it, but we're not at that stage. I think the time
energy.
I think the nonprofit status is the next major step for us.
Yeah,
that's the next change in the business. Most small businesses, if you at 5 years are not shifting a profit, you need to call it a day, and that is statistically the proof. And so we are at 4 years. Thanks to the center, they've allowed us to stay alive. If it wasn't for being in this space, we would not be probably not even close to this incarnation, maybe a different kind of pop-up element, but definitely not in production like this. So to them, we owe a debt. And I think the next step as a nonprofit, generating some income, and then ultimately hiring people and paying, job generation, right? So
that would be amazing.
Yeah. So there are all kinds of ambitions that we have, and it's just a matter of us freeing up time and
to figure out how to get
there. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, guys, thank you so much.
Yeah, sweet. Thank you.
To get the story.
Yeah. Thanks for having us.